You ever watch one of those crime shows and just wish you had a perfect memory? You know, the ability to recall every single detail and solve the case? It's a total pop culture fantasy. But today, we're going to dive into what the real thing actually looks like.
No, seriously. Think about that for a second. What if you could remember every conversation you've ever had, every meal you've ever eaten, every single day of your life, just in perfect, vivid detail? Sounds like an amazing superpower, right?
Because, let's be honest, the gap between that fantasy and our own reality is massive. On TV, detectives remember every single clue. In real life, well, most of us are lucky if we can remember what we ate for lunch yesterday. All the boring, day-to-day stuff just kind of fades away.
But here's the thing. This ability isn't just a fantasy. There's a very real condition, and it's called hyperthymesia. Now, this is not the same thing as a photographic memory, which, by the way, science has never actually proven is real. Hyperthymesia, on the other hand, is a documented, studied phenomenon.
So, what is it exactly? Well, hyperthymesia is what's called a superior autobiographical memory. And that word, autobiographical, is the absolute key here. It's about remembering your own life, your personal experiences with incredible, shocking accuracy. And it's almost always tied to specific calendar dates.
What's pretty wild is just how new and how rare this all is. Science only put a name to it back in 2006. And there are just a few dozen confirmed cases in the entire world. For the people who have it, this crazy recall ability usually kicks in around the age of 10. You can give them pretty much any date from their past and they can tell you the day of the week and exactly what they were doing.
And the person who brought this all into the spotlight wasn't a scientist, but a woman named Jill Price. And she didn't come forward to show off. She actually went to neurologists asking for help, hoping that by understanding her own mind, she could maybe help other people.
And to give you a sense of just how powerful her memory was, get this. Researchers, without any warning, asked her to list every single Easter she could remember since 1980. In just 10 minutes, she reeled off over 20 years of dates, complete with personal memories for each one, and she only made a single mistake. It's just astounding.
So, this all brings us to the big question. Is this thing a superpower, or is it actually a curse? Well, as it turns out, living with total recall has two very, very different sides. On the one hand, yeah, it can be a huge advantage. There's one man, Brad Williams, who used his memory to become a contestant on Jeopardy! Another person won a bunch of vacations through trivia contests. And the actress Marilu Henner, who has hyperthymesia, even worked as an advisor for that TV show, Unforgettable.
But then, you have the other side of the coin. Imagine remembering, in excruciating detail, every single embarrassing thing you've ever said, every mistake. For Jill Price, her memory was this constant, uncontrollable flood. She described it as a burden, something that was driving her crazy.
This intense contrast, this duality, has obviously made scientists want to look for answers. What is actually happening inside the brain of someone with hyperthymesia?
The scientific journey has been pretty short but incredibly fascinating. So after Price's case came out in 2006, there was a big study in 2012 that looked at 11 people with the condition and found some really interesting patterns in their brains. But it was a study in 2013 that revealed the most shocking twist of all.
Okay, so brain scans showed some things you might expect, like more activity or even different shapes in the parts of the brain tied to personal memory. But here's the surprise. They also found less gray matter in areas similar to what doctors see in people with OCD. Now, to be clear, none of the subjects had OCD, but it hints that maybe there's some kind of shared mechanism in the brain. And all of this brings us to a really critical realization. This extraordinary memory, it's not so perfect after all. In fact, it has some very clear, very distinct limits. See, when it comes to that autobiographical memory, remembering their own life events, they are absolutely off the charts. But on other kinds of memory tests, like, say, working memory, memorizing a string of random numbers, they perform just like everybody else, completely normal. Their ability is highly specific.
Okay, so their memory is specialized, we get that. But is it at least infallible? Is it a perfect, untainted recording of what actually happened?
The answer is a huge, resounding no. In that 2013 study, researchers suggested to both a control group and the group with hyperthymesia that they had seen video footage of the plane that crashed in a field on 9/11, footage that simply does not exist. And guess what? Both groups were susceptible to this false memory. In fact, the group with hyperthymesia was even a little bit more susceptible.
And this brings us to the biggest takeaway of all.
Human memory is not a tape recorder. It's not a video camera that just plays back a file. For every single one of us, remembering is a process of reconstruction.
Think of it like this. Every single time we recall an event, we are actively rebuilding it from pieces. What all this research suggests is that people with hyperthymesia aren't using some different secret memory system. They're using the exact same reconstructive process as the rest of us. They're just, for some reason, extraordinarily good at it. And this leaves us with a pretty fascinating, almost philosophical question. When you see the incredible burden that near-perfect recall can be, and you learn that even the very best memories are flawed, you have to wonder, what if forgetting isn't a bug in our mental software? What if it's actually a feature?